Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Sphere of Being, where, as I always say, it's our job to put our oxygen masks on first, isn't it? Because if we're gasping for breath, if we've not got enough fuel in the tank, how are we going to give that to other people without having an adverse effect on our mental health, maybe, our wellness, our overall kindness barometer? Because I know what it's like to be stressed and snap at people, and you think, oh, goodness me, I shouldn't have done that. But once you've done it, it's too late because it's out there. And as you know, every single time we have a podcast, I'm looking for a variety of different guests that will resonate with lots of different people because it can be similar words that we talk about, similar topics. But every now and again, somebody might be mentioning something slightly different, and you go, I get that now. This has all become clear. And today, this is no exception because everybody that we have on this show is a truly heart-centered leader. They absolutely come with their authenticity, their truth, their compassion, and their love. And that's the kind of the criteria to make sure that people are on the show, because that's, I know, something that everybody will benefit from. And today, there's no exception in that. It's the wonderful Emma Loker. Now, Emma, my goodness me, I'm going to have to read this because it's a long word. So, Emma is a psychotherapeutic counselor for children and adolescents. She is also the founder of MindWrite, which is all about mental health writing, and she has an agency for that, which is a wonderful thing to do because she gets in the written word all of these great things that can help with mental health. And this business of hers, it's only new, but it's absolutely taking the world by storm. She's doing a cracking job, and as she should, because this is a very talented lady. She is a wordsmith extraordinaire. She has a wonderful way about her. And her mission is to make mental health available to the masses through the written word, which is a wonderful mission to have so that she can touch millions of people's lives and just help them to get out of that fog of depression, mental health, mental illness, etc. And I know because I've been there from the nervous breakthrough. Prior to that, I was not in a great way. And perhaps if I'd have spoken to Emma because of my abuse and trauma from childhood, things might not have been the course that they were. Maybe things would not been so painful. So it's with great pleasure that I now introduce you to Emma Loker. Welcome. It's lovely to have you on the show, Emma.
Thank you so much. It's lovely to be here.
Oh, bless you. And it's just your whole way about you. It's so calm and comforting. But I know that behind there's a lady with, I think it's was it, steel fist and a velvet glove. I think you can hold your own in all sorts of situations.
It's definitely a practice, I think. It's definitely from practice. It definitely was not automatic or innate for me. It's something that I've had to learn for sure.
Ah, well, you do stand in your truth and your power, and that comes across really, really strongly. And I love that about you. And I know that we've had a little bit of a discussion before we came on air, but I'd love you to take the listeners through the journey of where you've been to where you are now.
Yeah, for sure. So I'm from like a little village in the UK. And yeah, sort of lived a quite quiet life in the country. And then started studying at university, taking biology actually, of all topics. Realized at the time that hated it and it wasn't for me. And luckily, one of my roommates who I lived with, she studied psychology. And I was kind of looking at her notes and I thought, gosh, this is definitely something, this is more my alleyway. This is what I want to do. And so I sent an email to the head of year and I asked him if I could switch courses. And he said yes. And then ever since then, it's been completely mental health focused. So I did that. I got a first for that. And then I started working in an autism specialist school. So working with children and adolescents, autistic children and adolescents. And that was an amazing journey. I worked in sort of a residential support worker position and then as a form tutor in the school. And I learned so much from that. And I think it was kind of a springboard to me realizing that I wanted to be a therapist. So, so I started studying at the University of Cambridge to become a child and adolescent psychotherapist. And then after that point, sort of while I was studying, I got into mental health writing. And so I was doing that for around 5 years and loved it. You know, I loved being able to learn the sort of psychotherapy side of things, but also then put it into words and put it into writing and share it with people. And I really loved that aspect of it. And so I was doing that for a while and I realized how much of a need there is for credible mental health content written by professionals, people who understand the nuances in the language that's needed to support people with mental health difficulties. And that's where MindWrite came from, my agency. And yeah, we've been going for 6 months now. And I've been amazed by, by the sort of interest. I've been so pleased.
Oh, that is wonderful and wonderful journey as well. And right from a youngster, you had the wherewithal, the confidence in yourself to say, no, I don't want to read biology. I want to do something within the mental health space. And fair play to you because, it's all being something that you think, well, would that be nice? But I'm here and I'll stick with what I'm doing. You actually took the plunge. What do you think was it that really ignited your passion about what your friend was doing that you thought in psychology, yeah, that sounds something that I'd really love to do?
I think it was understanding the brain and you know it's such a unique system. You know, we see systems all of the time, but our own brains are so unique and so incredible, and we don't understand enough about them. And I think that really caught my interest of wow, you know, there's so much we don't know and so much we're still understanding. And this thing that we all carry around, you know, and that helps us you know, do everything that we do. And yet we have such a limited understanding of how it impacts our relationships, how it impacts how we feel. And that's kind of where it started. And I thought, wow, this is somewhere, you know, where I can really explore this and understand it a little bit more. And so, yeah, that's kind of where it started.
Oh, wonderful. And one of the things which is the theme of the podcast, caring for those that care for others, how do you help when you're counseling people? How do you make sure that you yourself as a counselor are okay?
I think this is a big question for sort of mental health professionals in general because, you know, it's well known that we are pretty bad at taking care of ourselves and that it really is a practice and that you really have to learn. And I am not perfect by any means. And I think for all of us, it's a work in progress. It's a journey. Um, a lot of my journey has been around the people that are around me. I try to surround myself with people who support me, people who are caring and kind, because I can turn to them, you know, when I need them. And I think having the right group of people in your life, they'll pull you up on things that you're doing. You know, if you're not taking care of yourself, they'll say, I don't think that's the right thing for you to do. And my fiance is great at this. You know, I'll tell him something and he'll say, do you really need to take that on right now? Or can we maybe think about that in the future and stuff like that? And I think having those people around you, first and foremost, to ground you and to remind you to take care of yourself is really powerful.
How important then do you think that community is for people in general to make sure that we are thriving in the best way possible?
I think it's so important. And I think it's getting less and less the case that people have this strong community that they can turn to, you know, with everything going with technology, with, you know, things like online dating, with, you know, all of the children and young people having their phones to hand and being on social media all of the time. and us not even understanding the full extent of the damage that social media can cause, I think we're in a loneliness epidemic. And I think having people who are your community, which I didn't find until maybe 3, 4 years ago, having those people there is so vital. It's so important because they really do pull you up on the things that you need to hear that you're maybe not telling yourself. But also just to have a listening ear and just someone to support you, or multiple people to support you, and just to listen.
Yeah. And thinking about mental health and in children and in adolescence, what would you see? And I can only speak sort of from a UK perspective. You might have other countries that you can draw from, but would you say that issues surrounding mental health are on the increase or on the decrease?
I'd say they're definitely increasing. And I think part of that is us being more aware of, the mental health difficulties and all of what that entails. But I also think that, we are more lonely. We've gone from sort of a collectivist community to one where we are more isolated, and we do have to take care of ourselves, and we are independent. Even, from childhood, we're encouraged to walk, we're encouraged to run, we're encouraged to do all of these things that we want to be hyper independent. And I think with that often comes loneliness and isolation. And I think a lot of that is affecting our mental health, and just that sense of not having that community, and also, being on our own and not having anyone to talk to. It's such a powerful sort of reason why many people are struggling.
And what would you say as you deal with children and adolescents? Let's say you're a parent or a guardian. What signs can you watch out for in the person that you are giving, who is in your care, to the child or to the adolescent? What should people be trying to spot or see? Because it might not be something that the child or the adolescent is going to want to talk to you about or even know to talk to you about it. So I'd love your thoughts on that.
I think first and foremost, behavior change, and that can look like many different things. It can look like externalizing behaviors, so, disruptive behaviors, but also withdrawal. So where they withdraw into themselves. And, I can imagine a lot of parents listening to this are thinking, well, that's just the teen years, that's what they do. And obviously that is the reality, that is the truth. But also, your child really well. And there's a behavior change that often comes with mental health difficulties. And sometimes it can be quite subtle, or it can be really glaringly obvious. And so, yeah, behavior change first and foremost, but also, noticing things like changes in appetite or changes in sleep, these really sort of foundational things, which can be disrupted when someone's struggling with anxiety, when someone's struggling with depression. And that is like the foundation of when people are struggling with mental health difficulties. And then, of course, there are the more obvious things where, they don't want to talk anymore when they used to want to talk. If they're trying to communicate to you about how they're feeling, it's really important that we have an open environment and that we're compassionate about these things. And it can be really difficult because it's uncomfortable, right? These conversations are uncomfortable. And, I remember when I was a lot younger, I struggled with anxiety and depression for a long time, still really struggle with anxiety, but, use tools to manage. And I remember saying to my mum, like, I feel really down. I feel really, really down. And it's so hard to have those conversations with your child, because that's the last place you want them to be. That's the last thing you want them to feel. And I think when you're sort of supporting a young person or a child to manage their mental health, it is a lot about listening and offering support. We often jump to solutions, but actually the foundation is listening.
this is an interesting point of view, is how would you say, as a parent, I'm not a parent, so I can't speak from that perspective. But what I can do is being somebody who has been through the other side of that and being the child with anxiety and knowing how my parents were the perpetrators pretty much of it. So I couldn't actually go to them, so I had nobody to talk to. Um, in the regard of how not to jump in to try and fix things, however, you really feel that that's something, obviously, as you love your child, that you want to do. How do you navigate that rather difficult conversation?
I think it's about really staying in the moment. And it's so easy to sort of problem solve and to jump to, right, what do I do now? How do I fix this? And as parents, I think a lot of parents feel that that is their responsibility, that's their duty. But what I learned on my counselling course was that as soon as the brain switches on, the ears switch off, and you stop listening and you stop actually hearing what they're trying to tell you. And so listening first and foremost, giving them your full attention and just saying, it makes total sense that you feel that way. I'm sorry that you feel that way. But thinking about it from their perspective, stepping into their shoes and thinking, well, if I had my exams, I would feel really stressed as well. Or, if someone had picked on me for the last 6 months, then I would feel really low and I wouldn't feel great about myself either. And I think rather than stepping into your role as a parent and being responsible and making decisions, that benefit your child, firstly listening to them and thinking, what would I feel like if I was in their position?
Mm. And when you have to make the decision to think about needing assistance outside of your own parental or guardian perspective and framework, and you need to go outside that, what kind of things are the prompts to look for, to seek, to think from your child or adolescent? What type of things would they be displaying that you think actually now it's time to perhaps go to somebody like yourself?
I think it's really important that it's a conversation and that the young person gets a say, because with therapy, if they're not in it, then it's very hard to make change and it's very hard to grow and learn from that. So first and foremost would be to have a chat with your child, with your adolescent, and to see if they feel that they need support, if they feel that they need the help, the therapeutic help, and to offer them guidance by saying, look, you've told me this and it feels like you could benefit from support. Is this something that you would want? And a lot of the time, children do just want to be heard. And if you offer them help, a lot of the time, and with today's teens and young people, they often jump at the opportunity because the stigma is reducing and they are much more open to therapy than previous generations have been. And so, having someone where they can just listen and then introducing what the idea of what therapy is. So, it's a space where you can just talk about you and it's confidential. So they won't go and tell, parents, or they won't tell your teacher, or they won't tell your friends. It's a confidential space that's just yours. And you get to talk about you and share what's going on for you without any judgment. And I think, who of us wouldn't benefit from that, really?
Yes, I completely agree. And I always used to say, because of my background and the way in which my life was, that I couldn't do therapy because it would mean I had a nervous breakdown. And it actually took a nervous breakthrough, as I
Mm.
call it, because it was the best thing that happened, to actually then go, I need the therapy. It was a bit like, shutting the door after the horse had bolted. But yes, and if you can get there, knowing how bad I felt before that happened, that could have been a game changer. But we are where we are, and everything has the timing that it has. But where would you say the signs would be to say, well, this has now moved on from I've been picked on or I've got exams, what would be the type of thing to say, right, okay, I think now we need to have a chat with the child to talk about the possibility of therapy? Because obviously something that's just happened or what have you, what kind of behaviors would you see that you could just be alerted to think, you know what, whatever we were trying to do within the family or within that guardian element, actually now we need to seek a little bit more assistance.
I think seeing them struggle, seeing the struggle, seeing everyday things become less interesting, become less enjoyable, become harder, that sort of um, irritability and the sort of mood shift. I think, obviously more so than what you would expect in a teen or a young person, noticing those behavior changes, those changes in sleep, those difficulties, with anxiety, you might see things like skin picking, you might see things like biting nails, you might notice, if it's OCD tendencies, you might notice things being moved around and put in certain positions and lots of different, obviously it differs depending on what the difficulty is, but predominantly noticing those behavior changes and thinking this isn't right for my child, this isn't how they usually are, this isn't the child that I know, and that being a warning sign of, okay, something here is different, something here is not right, and then being reinforced with that conversation with your child, asking them, is everything okay, like, are you struggling, do you need support? I think putting those two things together, that behavior change, noticing those things, asking yourself, is this different to what my child is normally like, and then having that conversation with them, they're the two things that I would go to.
Yeah. And it's always a delicate subject, isn't it? And sometimes, what would you say to people that are thinking to themselves, well, it must be because of me that my child is suffering in this way, or I'm doing something wrong? What would you say in that instance to the parent or guardian that's looking to themselves as the root of the problem?
I think it's really natural to internalize those things and to think that we are at fault and to kind of consider everything that we've done and put the blame at our own door and think, oh, this was me, this is what I've done all of these things. Maybe it was the fact that we had an argument last week, maybe it was the fact that I wasn't able to be supportive on that day, and I think that's really natural. So giving yourself some compassion for that, for starters, but also thinking about everything else that it could be. And I think often we go down one avenue and then we have tunnel vision, don't we? And we're like, okay, this must be it. This must be the reason. It's all because of me. I'm at fault. But then actually reminding yourself, and often I like to journal things to kind of trigger thoughts in my mind, but to think, okay, what else could it be? Could it be something at school? Could it be that they're struggling with their schoolwork, that they're struggling with their friends? Could it be hormone changes that are affecting them? It could be such a variety of things. And I think just reminding yourself of that, maybe the argument, they did struggle with the argument last week, but that isn't necessarily the sole reason why they're struggling with their mental health. And often what you find with mental health is it is a combination of things, and a combination of things that leads life to feel overwhelming or that makes it hard to go about your day-to-day life, and kind of putting the blame solely at your door, I think makes it really difficult for you to then manage those feelings as well. And it takes you away from supporting your child. So yeah, definitely consider all of those other different things that could be having an influence as well.
This is really helpful because, now that, as you say, the stigma, and again, if anybody is feeling, oh gosh, if I went somewhere, that's an admission of failure as a parent on my part or a guardian on my part, I would say from personal experience, no, it's not. It is an actual accolade that you actually have done this step for the love and the benefit of the people that you care for. And I think that even in the times when we think I'm fine, a little bit of therapy sometimes can make all the difference because it can open up it's like giving the house a spring clean. It
Yeah.
can really help. And I think that from what you've said, it's very important to not judge and to think that the support is out there. Because I always say, if we got something where we weren't very well and we got COVID or we'd got some nasty bug or something, we go to the doctor and there wouldn't be any stigma in that. You know, we're not going to, so let's think about mental health as an holistic form of making sure that we're well all over our bodies, not just from the stigma that held from a few years ago, that you didn't mention these things and it held it under the carpet. So
Yeah.
yeah, that's great. I'm thinking about
Yeah.
mental health writing now that you do.
Mm.
What types of topics are you covering?
A very broad range. I mean, we work a lot with rehabilitation, so drug and alcohol rehabilitation, but also general mental health, so anxiety, depression, bipolar disorder, a whole range. And I think some of the more common things that you experience, so like anxiety and depression, but also some of the other topics like lifestyle topics as well. So things like body doubling, which is a very which is a very random topic, but it's basically about co-working with people when you work online, and how, when you work in a space with people online virtually, it can improve your productivity. And so loads and loads of different topics. So, some about mental health difficulties, but then also some very practical things about how you can improve your productivity, your motivation, things like that. Recently we covered, we're working with a rehabilitation centre, and we covered a lot of their web pages. So, how their services, their support services, and how their support services can benefit people who are struggling with, drug and alcohol addiction.
That's really interesting. And you say that there's a variety and quite an eclectic mix. So you would deal with big companies, small companies, or any company at all that needs that kind of work?
Yeah, lots of mental health companies. So we work primarily with mental health organizations, and we just started working with Mental Health Foundation actually, which we're really excited about. That's one of the sort of leading mental health organizations in the UK. So we're really excited to be working with the team there. But yeah, just a range again. So lots of therapists and their websites, but also, working on their blogs as well. So talking about their services, but also about, the struggles that their clients are facing. Like, recently we've written content about highly sensitive people, and how, when you struggle with highly sensitive emotions, how that impacts your day, your week, your months, how it impacts your relationships. And so we work with therapists, we work with mental health organizations, and we work with sort of mental health companies as well. So like rehabilitation centers, like people, like centers for mental health support services.
Wow, this is amazing. And is it just you that does all this writing? Because it sounds like you are rushed off your feet.
No, not me. So I built the company, but I have a team of amazing writers who I've been working with for a little while now. And some people who I've been working with for long periods of time, and other people who are new because the company's growing, but a real mix of people with such amazing backgrounds. I'm very, very lucky to have the team that I've got. I've got people who have worked in alcohol and drug addiction, and who have struggled with, those problems themselves, who can speak from a personal point of view. I've got people who work in the medical field. I've got clinical psychologists. I've got people with PhDs in psychology. So a whole range.
Ah, well, this is wonderful. So actually, they're blessed to actually have the qualifications, the experience, the insights into what they're actually going to be writing about. So yes. And how can people get in touch with you, Emma, both from the counselling side and because do you do counselling online? Is that something that you do, or is this on a face-to-face basis?
So I currently work 1 day a week in schools, which I find really grounds me in mental health and keeps me current. So I'm only working within schools at the moment. I don't do online working, just because I didn't sort of get a qualification specifically for online working. So I don't feel that it's within my remit. But yes, you can definitely find me online. I have quite a like high presence on LinkedIn. I also have, my MindWrite website, which, I'm sure I can provide. And yeah, just you know, via the website, via my LinkedIn, and also my email, which is emma@mindwrite. Oh, I need to double check that. Sorry.
That's all right. That's okay. We'll get it down onto the description for everybody so that you can get hold of Emma. And one of the great things is, I mean, the flexibility of her service, as you can hear, the quality of the people that work with her to provide this wonderful content that they're creating. This is such a blessing. And those schools that have the privilege of you working with them on what you're doing there, this is just an amazing thing because, as we do have become more aware of mental health and the various forms that that can take, it's such an important part of the next generation, especially coming up, so that they're kind of sorted before then they have their children, and it goes on in perpetuity, to the sense that, if you have parents that aren't sorted or getting that way or understanding of mental health issues, then that can be difficult. And both my parents suffered from mental illness, I realize now. But of course, in that era, that wasn't something that you talked about. And I just don't even think they recognized it in themselves. But obviously, it did come out in pretty horrendous ways. But people just thought, well, you just get on with it because it's just life. But it doesn't have to be like that, because it can be very debilitating, especially if that's all you've ever known, because there is a wonderful world outside of that, which I know, Emma, you would agree with me on that one.
Mhm.
So, Emma, thank you so much. It's been a real joy to listen to you. You're very wise and erudite in the subjects that you talk about so well, and put it in such an accessible format. And I think that what you've done in helping people to spot some signs if their child is, or if their child or adolescent is not quite what they'd expect them to be under the circumstances, what they are usually. I think you've given some people some really good advice and some tips on, actually, you know what? Yeah, maybe something underlying is there, because a lot of kids wouldn't know how to express it in a way, and especially with mum and dad or their guardian, or guardians, you just think, or, nobody will be interested, so I won't mention it. And that's where the problem can become much bigger. Whereas if you have that conversation, it can be nipped in the bud, and that's always the best thing. So thank you so much for being a beautiful special guest on the show. It's been a
Thank
real
you.
privilege to have you, Emma. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Oh, it's my pleasure. And for everybody listening, thanks so much for tuning in. Please do like, subscribe, and comment, share it, because this is such an important topic. Mental health amongst our nearest and dearest and also if you're a teacher, and as Emma said, she works in schools, and you see somebody that's not quite right, you can take the measures to actually, in the long run, make a huge difference to that child's life in the future. So thanks so much for being such wonderful people in this community. I truly appreciate all of your support. It's just wonderful to have you with us. And if you think that anybody else would like to join the show and have a listen, please do, as I say, share and comment. It would be great to have those. Until next time, keep carry on caring, and we'll see you all again very soon. Bye bye now. Take care.